All right, so as stated at the end of this video, it's becoming nearly impossible to stay out of homeowners associations. So if your next home buying options are located in an HOA, it's critical to know what to look for so you don't end up in a nightmare. So do yourself a favor and watch this video and save your future self some time and headaches. So the first thing we're going to look out for is poor communication. For starters, if you have a hard time getting a hold of the management company of an HOA you're looking to buy into, that's a huge red flag. Their responsiveness and willingness to communicate with you and or your realtor during the purchase process will be what you can expect from them once you're an owner. If you're having difficulty getting documents you're legally entitled to, like financial reports, condo docs, and a resale certificate, or if you suspect the board and or management company is evading questions, like being too ambiguous or just simply not being transparent enough, move on. It may be tempting to ignore this, maybe because you really like the property or you're desperate to find a home, but trust me, it's not worth it. You will pay for that decision down the line. Second thing to watch out for. You are not a rule follower or their rules are too unreasonable. All homeowners associations have rules, regulations, and covenants that you'll be legally obligated to follow. If you don't think you can do that, then an HOA probably isn't a smart option for you, at all. But if you're like most people and you don't mind following some rules to keep your neighborhood looking good and well maintained, then keep an eye out for what their rules are. Are they reasonable? Do they seem excessive? Are they enforced equally? Request a copy of the HOA's CC&R, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, and read them thoroughly. Yes, they are long and boring, and yes, you should do it anyways. Your future self will thank me. Also, as stated before, if the board or management company isn't forthcoming with this information, or if it takes way too long to provide that information, it might be best to cut and run. Now, even if these rules are a little outdated, this in and of itself might not be a reason to pass up on the property. Why? Because homeowners are typically able to amend HOA rules. However, this leads us to our third point. The changes you need for it to be livable are too difficult to make happen. When you purchase a property in an HOA, you can be in the driver's seat if you want to. However, if the changes you'd like to see are too hard to make happen or you don't want to take the time to see the changes through, it may not be worth it for you. As always, seek to understand why things are the way they are from the people who've been there the longest before trying to change things. This brings us to our fourth point. Having a low participation from membership or unit owners in board discussions can be good or bad depending on what you're trying to accomplish. If you want inclusivity, a sense of community, and financial stability, low participation probably isn't great for that. If you want to come in and overhaul the association and make sweeping changes, low participation is probably favorable to your objective, as there are less people invested in the current regime to prevent you from going in and bringing the changes you'd like to see. It all comes down to the time and resources you are willing to allocate to make that prospective HOA livable for you. And speaking of resources, this brings us to our fifth point, bad finances. The HOA is technically a corporation, and the best metric to tell how an HOA or corporation is doing is by their financial state. Numbers don't lie, and if they do, then it probably means someone else is lying. Remember, your HOA dues will be incredibly important to the upkeep and maintenance of the community. Requesting a copy of the HOA's budget will reveal what exactly is being done with this money. For example, if an HOA has low dues, this might seem like an extremely attractive selling point to new home buyers. But when you request a copy of the budget, if you notice that the reserves, which are funds set aside for unseen issues, are really low relative to HOA dues, that's bad. It means that if you buy into this HOA and something comes up, you and your fellow homeowners will be on the hook to cover the cost because the association doesn't have the reserves to cover it. Also, if HOA dues are very low compared to other similar HOAs in the area, this is usually indicative of under budgeting towards reserves. And it means there's a large special assessment in that HOA's future. There are exceptions, but buying a property because it has low HOA dues is typically fool's gold. Don't base your whole decision on that. Special assessments are sometimes necessary no matter how well the HOA is managed, but do yourself a favor and do your homework. Ask about prior assessments, if there are any future assessments coming up, and even for the heck of it, if there are any lawsuits. Yes, surprisingly, a lawsuit from another homeowner can make your dues spike acutely if they're owed money from the resulting court case or if your HOA's insurance premiums skyrocket due to a big payout. But looking at numbers isn't the only way to figure out if an HOA is mismanaging funds. This brings us to our sixth point. What's its general appearance? Does it have a generally run-down appearance? When you drive into the HOA, how does everything look? First impressions in some cases mean exactly what you see. While the property you're interested in may look pretty good, what about the surrounding areas? Are the grounds kept up? Are the buildings in disrepair? Are the homes well maintained? If what you're seeing is mostly negative, then understand that this could be the result of those low HOA dues that drew you in the first place. And if the dues aren't low, but it appears that the community still isn't doing well, then other things could be going on behind the scenes. It could be the result of past issues or embezzlement. Either way, investigate. Our seventh point, a right of first refusal. So what if you've decided that this HOA is pretty good? You take the good with the bad and you'll just go with the flow. Well, in some older associations, there may be something called a right of first refusal clause. What does that mean? If you decide to sell your home and you found a buyer, this rule allows the association to review the offer and contract and potentially buy the unit themselves at the same price and for the same terms as the existing contract. The issue with this is that the process and paperwork can be slow and cumbersome. Even if the association doesn't exercise that right, it can hold up your sale. While it's rare, there have also been cases where HOA boards have used this clause to discriminate against others. They can prevent minorities, single-parent households, or other marginalized people from buying property in the neighborhood. Determining if this will be an issue for you before you sign any papers will help you greatly if you decide to sell your property down the road. Eighth point, what are the chronic issues with the complex? This has a lot to do with when the HOA was built and who is the builder. Every HOA or construction project for that matter has weaknesses in build quality. Find out what the chronic issues are with the property you are looking at. If it's a brand new development, it might be that nobody knows yet. If it's older, it's likely that people have figured it out. The point is, do your research, find out when it was built, what are the typical construction quality issues in that area or typical for that builder, and if possible, what are the chronic issues of the development you are looking at this moment. Now, let's look at some positive indicators. Well-maintained grounds or structures. If it's clear that the board and property management are staying on top of maintenance and cleanliness, then that means they value the comfort and happiness of their homeowners. That's great for you. Clear communication and transparency. Something else that makes homeowners very happy and comfortable is when an HOA board is willing to communicate and be transparent. If the management company, or board members of the HOA if it's self-managed, are responsive when you ask questions, then this is a great sign. And don't be afraid to take it a step further. As mentioned earlier, talk to your potential neighbors about the community you're looking into. How do they feel about living there? Are they happy? Are they satisfied with the management company? Are they comfortable raising a family in that environment? No HOA is without its problems, but how they handle the problems that arise is crucial. If things are dealt with swiftly and with purpose, then you can have confidence that this HOA will treat you well as a new member. Reasonable rules and clear, consistent enforcement. When you read the CC&Rs, are they clear and reasonable? The last thing you want to do is be fined for violating a rule or regulation that wasn't clear in the first place. This is also something that you can ask your neighbors. Things may look really good on paper, but in practice, how are things handled? To that point, in some ways, an HOA that has strict rules and enforces them swiftly and equally isn't necessarily bad if you put a high value on order and uniformity. Usually rules are in place to make the living experience for everyone equal, enjoyable, and peaceable. It's less about the rules themselves and more about clear and consistent enforcement of those rules. This brings us to our last and final point, good management and finances. When it comes to the inevitable maintenance problems, a good HOA will be prepared as much as possible. Is the HOA or property management company shown to be responsive to requests and trustworthy? The budget of the association will show if enough money is being set aside in the reserves in the case of a big emergency. It will also be clear as to where every cent given to the association is going. Has the association done a reserve study? Does their budget reflect the results of that reserve study? When's the last time the dues changed? Have the dues stayed the same for the past 10 years or have they been adjusted annually for inflation? Do they have a multi-year budget plan and a capital improvement plan in place? If they've been or are in the process of doing all of the above, that's a really great sign. Like I mentioned before, special assessments may be in an association's future no matter how great the current board or how healthy the HOA's finances are. But if the finances are being taken care of properly, the chances of that lessens dramatically. Ultimately, if an association is taking or has taken on a special assessment or bank loan, it is the direct result of poor financial management or planning at some point in the past. That said, it may not be the result of actions from the current board or management company. Many times people doing the right thing inherit a bad situation, so ask about the history. A good current regime outweighs a bad past regime every time. So in conclusion, if you're someone who is considering buying a home within an HOA, arm yourself with these tips. Use a realtor experienced in dealing with homeowners associations. Don't go into this process blind and possibly end up in a bad situation. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one, and don't forget to tap the like button. Also, what are some things you look for or wish you'd looked for when buying in an HOA? Drop a comment below in the comment section. I'm Jared, the HOA Crusader, and I'll see you in the next video.